right, it may be a Friday, but they're very perennial and very serious socio-economic issues that we need to deal with on a day-to-day basis to fix this country, at least one episode of Sunrise at a time. We'll have young lions, robust leaders in their various areas of influence who will join us for this discussion. We have Tumi, our very own Faith Mangope, DJ Euphonic, he's back with Step Up or Step Out. You know that guy. Who's that guy? Andrew Slicker, good to have you. I mean, guys, when it comes to discussing things, we're not shy as South Africans. We protect our democracy fervently, but it also needs to trickle through to tangibles. I mean, Euphonic, just your view of the true state of South Africa, particularly from a young perspective or youth perspective.
All I can say is I just read Kenny Kunene's letter, and I'm in absolute awe and big up to him.
Yeah.
For telling the truth the way it is. And I just think a lot of us just sit back and we just like watch things happen, and we need to start making things happen and changing the way the country is. And yeah, it's right now, like, I'm not confident in my country. That's the honest truth.
Yeah. And Slicker, I mean, you're famous for blacks are stupid, dumb.
Yeah.
What were we?
Fools.
Fools. Blacks are fools. But speaking really about that paradigm shift that we need to apply critical thinking in how we observe South Africa, and also in interpreting what's going on around us. Do you think it's that bad?
I think, you know, it's just one thing. It's just awareness, you know.
Yeah.
There's not enough awareness, you know. We're living in a society that thinks that they are at a certain place, that perceive their progression, and that's the challenge. We have a perceived progression, and we're not really progressive.
Yeah.
That's the masses of South Africa. So until we can be true with who we are and where we are, then you will hear me clearly when the mic goes up. then you know we'll be in a position where we are progressive. We must be real. You know what I mean?
This is a chat, by the way. So, you know, anybody chip in at any given point. We just had a chat with the spokesperson of the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, Mr. Mkochwa, who insinuated that if people in the villages were granted permits or to own their land, they could be victims of unscrupulous businesses, or, you know, be enticed to use that land for collateral. Yeah. It boggles the mind.
You know, for me, when we look at it, we reflect on 100 years of Natives Land Act. And if black people were moved into the rural areas, black people were moved back into those very same areas that this particular gentleman is saying that we are going to be exploited of. We knew about farming way before the people that had the land now knew about it. And I think to a certain extent we undermine the abilities and the minds of people in the rural areas. They were doing these things longer than what we can imagine. And I think what we can do is actually move towards a place where we better educate younger people who might not have an idea, or even supplement those the elderly that are back in those rural areas, supplement their knowledge on how to maintain the land. But we cannot necessarily say that they have no idea how to run the system and they can easily be exploited.
Yeah, I know we're very polarized as a nation, and I really don't want it to just boil down to black and white. But an analogy that we spoke about earlier, Andrew, of the progress or the advancement economically that white people have as an advantage, basically means that when the race is done and over, you're already dealing with your Achilles heel injuries. We're still stretching and warming up and preparing for that particular race as black people. How do you receive that analogy as a white person?
Cindy, I think the big thing is in South Africa right now, we don't have enough central dialogues. We talk about the rainbow nation that Tata Madiba created, and I don't think right now we have a rainbow nation. We're not talking between black and white people to say, well, what are your issues? What are my issues? How do I feel about this? How do I feel about this? In open dialogues. And I think we need a lot more of that to actually take this country forward. It's not about the past, and the past is the past. Young people need to take this forward, and they need to make it happen. And I really believe it starts with actual talking and discussing.
Yeah, I also think, like, you know, if I walk into a shop and I buy something, like, I expect to get my money's worth out of that something. The same way that, like, if I'm going to go into a voting booth and cast my vote on something that I was marketed to, when someone says, this is what I'm going to do for you, like, do it. But in the same light, like, a lot of us sit back and wait and hope that, like, we're going to get the outcome that we voted for. And unfortunately, we haven't.
Look, I personally think that the biggest misconception that Africans, and maybe let's just say South Africa has, is that in the past, let's say from 1900 to 2000 and today, the biggest misconception that we have is that, like, there's only been a black struggle. And as long as we live with that sort of thinking, we'll always create another enemy. Because the Boer, which obviously they will make up for white people right now, you know, they also went through the same struggle, which is like a concentration camp struggle that they got from Europe. So when you look at it now, another misconception that we have is that black people, black people today, presently, are the only people that struggle.
Yeah.
So do you notice that we've got a society problem? We don't have a race problem. But like, because we're closer to our own race, we can literally go, we can reflect off our own race. But if we sit there and we go, society has a problem, we start making society solutions. So
Yeah.
we're busy making like race solutions.
Yeah, but
and we
Slika,
keep
I have
on
a problem with that. It's too
conflicting also.
generalist. For me, it's just hovering. It's almost like in the cloud. I'm just saying, if we're saying that the biggest people that are disadvantaged still in 20 today are black people, then it's not a societal issue.
No,
because
wait,
for as long as you are economically active and you can hustle and take care of your business, you always have better access to good quality schooling, healthcare, etc., where other people are not.
But hold on. You must remember that black people are also the majority in South Africa, and white people are the minority, right? So the reality is, there are people that are black and white people that are doing well, and that we whether we see it on the papers, whatever the case be, but we still don't own anything economically from a black people's perspective.
There's a reason for that.
But yes, there is a reason.
We can't blame it on the Holocaust. The Holocaust had nothing to do with the struggles of. I'm sorry. You know, I'm hearing this, like, and to a certain extent, I hear what you're saying. You know what I mean? Yes, there are white struggles out there, and we cannot, you know, shy away from that. But we cannot take an analogy of a Holocaust, something that happened very far-fetched from South Africa, and want to compare the situations. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me get
All
to
right,
where
just
I'm going.
dialogue, please. Let's just all
let me get to where I'm going. Yes, white people have their own struggles, but let's bring it back to home, which is South Africa. And we must understand that the stats speak for themselves. Yes, you are correct in saying that South Africa has a majority of black people and a minority of white people, but it was that same minority that managed to colonize and mess with the minds of black people for over 300 years with the apartheid system. Now, how do you break that system? Yes, we are in the majority, but it's the same majority that was oppressed. The economic stances speak for themselves, and this is where we now have to bridge a gap. Andrew speaks about how we should have conversations and dialogues. Yes, we can have conversations and dialogues, and we can speak until we're blue to the face. But what concerns me is the content of the dialogue that we're discussing and what comes out at the end of those discussions. We may sit and have a conversation forever and a day, but we may never get to a solution. We need to be open enough to say, you know what, as Andrew, someone who had a resource, I will take and I will mentor Ayanda, who did not have the resources or the capacity, and we will move forward.
Look, I'm really sorry. Please, can I just get the ladies in front to also say a word or two?
Look, I think that the one thing that resonates amongst all of our conversations is the notion of a mindset shift.
Yeah.
When we cannot have, they always say that true emancipation begins in the mind. You start by liberating the person's thinking before you can liberate the person's being in the state of existence.
Yeah.
And the way that we do that is because is to start a notion and a dialogue where young people start thinking as the owners of industry rather than the ones that are supposed to be facilitating the actual progression of that industry. When we start thinking as the owners, Mapungubwe is a very typical example. When we start looking at the people of Mapungubwe who are willing to trade with other nations at that stage, many years ago, it shows you that these were people, black people, that were thinking as owners of industry. And I think that for us black people to start, even white people for that matter in this country, we need to start taking accountability first of all and start realizing that really nobody's going to give it to us on a silver platter. The moment you start addressing yourself as an owner of industry, that is the time that true emancipation takes place.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not expecting that, you know, there's manna from heaven. The fact that even the barriers of entry, be it starting a business, etc., it's hugely cumbersome. And very difficult, especially if you're not somebody that is advantaged, i.e. the education, etc. It's double the trouble for a black person. So how then, in your view, do you think we need to deal with the issues of inequality so much so that the person who was disadvantaged is almost given a springboard to propel themselves?
Just in addition with what Faith said, which I totally agree with, I think the most problem that us black people have as well is the problem of self-development. So what we do is that we try and focus on ourselves and what we can get from it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of actually trying to build one another. And I think that's the difference between black people and white people, that white people, when they do get opportunities, they do open the doors for other people.
Yeah.
But black people, we just have so much black on black hate that it's so difficult for us to move forward.
Yeah.
And it becomes such a struggle for us to get to the level that we want to get to.
Point taken. I believe we have 2 callers struggling to hear a little bit on this side. Stan is on the line, and we'll take our second caller as well. Please make your point.
Yes.
Hello?
Well, hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. What I want to say is that black people have been disadvantaged because the land was taken away from them. Not only the land, but their livelihood was taken away from them for a long time, for about 100 years. We redressed. And the government is the only people who have the power to redress those inequalities. Now, they need to step in and help the youth to realize that, to help the youth to redress the issues about land, and not only land, education, and the rest of the other issues that are encompassing the black people. Now, the white people are at the advantageous point because they took the land. They are the ones.
Okay, Stan, we lost you there. I believe we're going to take a quick ad break. We'll continue with that discussion. Please keep the phone lines buzzing. We're talking about how young people really can take on the baton to change the course of South Africa's landscape. We're back after this.